welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Procurement Pivots podcast, in which we are going to be discussing progress over perfection and what that means for us in our careers and in our professional working lives.
And I think actually this podcast, we hope, is probably an example of us showing that we practice what we preach. And this is us bringing an imperfect podcast to all of you, where we're learning on the job. And we read quite a lot of kind of tips and tricks when you're setting up a podcast, and there's all this advice around what you should do, what you could do, hire these really glitzy studios and buy these really expensive microphones and equipment and script all the episodes out. But we decided to just get started, and there was quite a lot of planning that went in the background. So it wasn't that we had an idea and we just, the next day started recording. But hopefully this episode and this journey that we're on with all of you is an example of us just getting started and hopefully tweaking and improving and evolving as we go along.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about messy action sometimes, about how if we wait forever for things to be perfect, we'll be waiting forever. So we've got to really embrace progress, and this podcast, you're right, is that, because we have talked about it for a long time. We were planning for a long time. We've recorded episodes and then second guessed, or did we like what we said there or not? But we definitely want to bring our authentic selves to this, and I think this podcast is definitely proof of that. Now, what we would say as well, Donna, and we were talking about this, is that we do have help, don't we, with editing the podcast. So, for example, the intros, the outros, and somebody pulls together, this wonderful person pulls together some clips and reels for us. What did we find when we first had the first episode reviewed?
Well, so we sent the first episode off and it came back, and we both independently listened and then kind of messaged each other, because she had done exactly what we'd asked her to do. She'd actually edited the episode, and she'd taken out all of those imperfections, the stutters, the pauses, the ums, the ahs. I've got quite a few of those. And we just listened and we were like, that's not us at all. It didn't feel like us. The conversation didn't flow that naturally. And so, we asked our podcast editor to put all of those imperfections back in. So what you see is real, and it's, these episodes are actually not edited. It's just, graphics are put on top. But we wanted to bring our real authentic selves to the episode, good, bad, or ugly, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. So and absolutely is my filler word, by the way, I've noticed through recording these podcasts. But what I would say, and we've used a real life example for us there when it comes to progress over perfection. And I'd like to think that we look back in a couple of years' time, if we're still doing these weekly episodes, and go, oh, wow, we have made progress. But this is a very real challenge, isn't it, for our clients? It's a very real thing that comes up in business for us and for the people that we work with. So let's talk a little bit more about what we want to cover today, for how it manifests in our clients.
So I think we're there's probably a number of elements that we're going to be covering. I think, yeah, one of them is going to be kind of looking at maybe some of the different scenarios that we see, kind of where people are maybe allowing their worry, their concern, their want to wait for the perfect time to do something, like how actually that kind of striving for perfection is actually holding them back in their careers. So I think we're probably going to talk about, some of the different examples of what that can look like. What else are we covering today? Good question.
Yeah, so exactly like you were saying, how it manifests for our clients, but also how maybe we've found it in
Yeah,
business. And I always like to look at I guess the psychology behind it as well. So there's a theory that I'd like to walk through as well with how perfection can be a great asset, but also a big drawback, and how to recognize when you're teetering over the edge into
yeah.
it being holding us back. So yeah, that I think that's where we're going to go with this.
Yeah, so we'll get started. So yeah, so with your clients, then, Laura, like how, if you're working with a client and um, you're kind of suspecting that, they're striving for perfection might actually be holding back the progress. Like how does that look? Like how does that present itself, would you say?
Yeah, if I was to think about the clients that I work with who are at a senior level, who are developing their procurement strategy, they're looking to build their influence with senior executive stakeholders. There is this element of wanting their plan to be perfect, their strategy to be perfect, because they fear being vulnerable in a room full of other people who they perceive to be more knowledgeable. So we talk about how to embrace an element of imperfection and to take some messy action, because sometimes we put other people on a pedestal thinking that they have all the answers and we're the ones who don't. And so we just sort of reframe that. Where is that perfection showing up for them? So that's in the strategic planning that does happen. And when they were in the weeds of the operations of procurement, it might be that they were excellent at nailing the details in contracts. Perfection has its
Mm.
absolute plus points, right? But when it comes to stepping into a new role, you're taking a bigger picture view of everything. You're looking to influence an influencing plan as well. They want to know exactly how they're going to influence this person, and it stops them from taking the initial action of building that relationship. So that's where it really shows up for me with my clients. What about you?
Yeah, I think in a variety of ways actually. So, a large number of the clients I'm supporting, it's helping them to navigate some kind of transition or move. Often a job move, often externally, but not always. And so, yeah, I speak to clients, and sometimes they might say, I know my CV's not perfect just yet, so I'm going to just hold off for the minute and wait until I've
Mm.
kind of worked on my CV. I think networking's a really big one. It's I think lots of people on the surface, like I think people know that building a strong personal network can be really, really beneficial in their career, but lots of people don't do it. And I think, on the surface, sometimes it's like, oh, I haven't had the time, I've not made the time to do it. But when you dig a bit deeper, often there is a fear associated with it of, well, actually, I don't really know how to do it. And I'm worried about, well, what happens if I don't get a good response and what are they going to think? And so often it's more kind of associated with that, but that worry, that concern of, I don't really know how to go about approaching it is stopping them doing any of it at all. And so actually, even though they know that networking could be really beneficial to help them to move forward in their career, they're just not doing it at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's lots of different scenarios actually. I think, also particularly in women, I would say, but not exclusively at all in women, but it often in women, like seeing roles and feeling like they are not ticking enough of the boxes to apply. And there has been some, some actual like official studies on this of kind of what percentage they think they need to meet the criteria in order to apply. And there are some quite big gender differences actually in the studies that have been done.
Mm.
But some people feel that if they don't tick all of those boxes, they can't apply because they're not going to be considered for the role. Now, in reality, I think actually if you genuinely tick every single one of those boxes on a job description, sometimes that can mean that that role is probably going to be a role that you can easily do within your capability. And yes, it will be challenging, often going in and learning and setting up, but sometimes you're going to find that your kind of your growth ability in that role is limited quite earlier than ideal. So yeah, but sometimes that can stop people from putting themselves forward um, for opportunities that really they should be and could, they would want to do, and they very much could do. So it's kind of stopping them taking that next step.
I think you hit on a great point there around fear. There's always a fear behind these things, and it can manifest itself as well in where you've got 10 operational tasks to do, little things that you just need to tick off the list, and you've got this one big strategic thing that's new, but it's the thing that's going to move you forward. So you think, oh, I'll just get all these out the way, blah 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 blah. Then another 10 come in, another 20,
Yeah.
and then that big thing that you've been wanting a clear headspace for, but at the same time waiting for the perfect moment to start, all of a sudden becomes further and further away. And that's the stuff that's going to help us grow. So I
Mm,
definitely agree that there's usually a fear that's associated with that. So if we don't have time, what's going on there? What's the fear? And that's what we tend
mm,
to often look at in the coaching if it's relevant to the goal. I mean, we all have lots of
yeah.
fears. Everyday fears, the not good enough fear is a great one.
Mm,
It's a very everyday fear. That's by Dr. Pippa Grange. She does a brilliant book called Fearless. So just looking, because I think I've got it somewhere on my desk. Um, so yeah, I think understanding what the fear associated to it is really, really powerful.
mm. And so looking at your own kind of journey and experience, like
Mm.
um, how has this kind of presented itself for you, would you say? Like actually, you know, have you kind of, have you allowed that kind of want to do things absolutely perfectly to kind of stop you from doing things or
Hmm. Absolutely, in some cases. In other cases, it doesn't bother me so much. So I was just trying to
mm,
think on the spot why that's the case, because
sorry.
maybe I've not reflected on that before, maybe. Who knows? Yes, I think when it happens most for me is the example that I've used actually just now around when there's something really big that I want to do a fantastic job on. It's like a bigger piece of work where I need hours of focus to give to it.
Mm,
And I've got all these other little things, and that within, I'm thinking, oh, I will have such a clearer headspace to tackle that big, scary thing if I get all this stuff out the way first. And that other stuff is everyday stuff that just keeps coming up. It never ends. It never
mm,
ends. So, and then that will mean that I either don't finish or don't complete whatever it is I want to do, or I'll be running against the clock to do it. So that's where it has manifested itself for me before. Other times, I'm so detached from the outcome. And we talked in
mm,
a previous episode about testing things as we have in business,
yeah.
as we're growing our business. There are some things I'm quite happy because my nature, my personality is that I will learn by doing and by what
Mm,
I don't see it as failure, but learn by stumbling.
yeah.
So I think it's interesting because it shows up for me sometimes, not always. And it's
Yeah.
recognizing what that gap is, what that difference is for me that I guess I'm still trying to work out. But again,
Mm.
we're all human. What about you, Donna?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had to very much learn, particularly since launching the business. I've really had to learn to get much more comfortable with doing things before I feel ready.
Mm.
I mean, even launching a business, like, do you ever really feel ready? Like, that's the thing. It's like, in an ideal world, you would have done all this training and learning and, setting up. But, actually that in itself is something that I think potentially you could procrastinate on and put off until I've done this course, until I've set up a website. I mean, actually, that is an example of, I really wanted to have my website live before the business launched, but it wasn't. But I did, I wanted it to be, but still launched anyway, and then that came. So yeah, I think just I think running the business has put me in a scenario because things are evolving so quickly, and you're kind of you're having to um develop some of it as you go, as opposed to kind of build it, develop it, and then do it, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So yeah,
Yeah.
I am becoming more comfortable, um, just taking the first leap with something, even if sometimes it's a bit like
Mm.
and there's been many of those moments in the last 12, many of
Yeah.
those moments. I mean, even this, this felt when we first started talking about it, you do like it. We were really excited, weren't we, about this idea? But then there is part of you that's like, can we, should we? And actually you do start thinking, well, do we need to worry about this and this and this and this? And like, actually, we did delay the start of this podcast because we were both so busy at home and in our businesses, our own businesses, that I think ideally we were hoping to get it launched probably a month or so before, weren't we? But I think I am learning to become a bit more comfortable, but even that can still be quite uncomfortable at the beginning.
Yeah, but I think it's through those, it's when we look back and we see that we've grown through doing that, starting before we're ready, that it becomes the norm. And I think
Yeah,
when you are running your own business, I think it certainly becomes the norm, starting before you're ready. I think where I'm seeing it show up with clients when they're working in-house, and again, I've used that example of waiting for a strategic plan, certainly from an influencing perspective, where they're waiting for the perfect time to engage somebody or the perfect pattern or intentional engagement with people. And we end up delving into, well, what's within your control there? Because there are so many things that when we're waiting for that perfect moment, it's practically impossible because there are so many things that are out of our control. So you can't control. I mean, I remember hearing, and this was before I was professionally coaching. It was when I was in house where we're waiting and we're building that plan, and then that member of staff leaves, and then a
mm,
new one comes along, and it moves your plan back by another few months
yeah.
because you don't want to bother the new stakeholder when they've just got into roles. So that starting before you're ready is such a valuable exercise. And I think, what does perfect even look like?
Is it even a thing?
No. Excellence is. I believe
Yeah,
you can be excellent.
yeah.
But that perfect engagement, and it's even look at like the biggest sports stars in the world, have they always had a perfect career? No, like it's all the
Mm,
stuff that you don't see. And I
yeah.
think actually, my daughter's really into athletics, and I took her to see the athletics meet in London this summer. And we were talking about how the race was over in seconds, but it's all the work that you don't see that they're doing up until that
Mm,
race, and that's where all of their perceived failures have been, and where the trials and tribulations, the missteps. And I think we can only apply those sorts of things to what our clients are going through and what we're going through
yeah,
as well. Like it involves so many attempts, or first attempts in learning fail,
yeah,
is what it stands
yeah,
for.
yeah.
So I think, yeah.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, again, this is definitely something that we've said a few times on a few previous episodes, but perfection is often like the end goal, and that's big, and that can be really quite overwhelming and almost impossible, and it is impossible to do that at once. And like, actually, progress is about doing it step by step by
Mm.
step, and I think then also recognizing, the recognizing those small steps can help to build your confidence, and that can help to kind of build your resilience and build the momentum as well. And that's kind of how you then keep moving
Mm.
forward. And so, just doing that first step that sometimes is uncomfortable, particularly if you feel like you're not quite ready, it's not quite where you'd love it to be. That first step is often the hardest, the most
Mm.
uncomfortable, but it does then get easier and easier as that kind of confidence and resilience and momentum keeps building. Um,
Yeah.
so I think, um, yeah, I do think all of us are guilty of this. We all have, you know, we all have things that we're holding ourselves back, I would say, because it's not the right time. But there's some things where it genuinely isn't the right time, so it's not in every occasion, but or where we're stopping ourselves doing something because we're just not quite there yet. We're not quite
Mm.
there. But I think it's then just like really like thinking about what are those things that really we would like to be doing, and why, like this kind of exploring like why are we not doing them, and can we break them down a bit to make that first step, that hardest step, make it maybe a bit of an easier one.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point earlier about recognizing those small wins along the way, because that's what will keep us going. But I also want to bring light to something around how striving to be perfect can actually be a stress response. So when we feel massively under pressure, we all have these default responses in us, but being perfect is one that some lean into more than others. And so it comes from the field of transactional analysis and how we relate to others and ourselves, and it takes the form of I'm only okay if I'm perfect. So my work, I as a procurement professional, me as a person, I'm only okay if I do everything perfectly. So
Mm,
that's one of the stress responses. There are a few others. There's one that's about be strong. So I'm only okay if I stay strong. One's only okay if I please other people. Another one's that I'm only okay if I hurry up. And the other one is I'm only okay if I try hard. So we all lean into these different, we all have them, but we lean into a couple more than we do the others. And be perfect is one that I see a lot in my clients.
mm,
And because they're used to being high performers, they're used to being able to achieve great things, and they seem to hit a bit of a ceiling when it comes
mm,
to trying something at the next stage. So when I present that model to them and I say, look, if this is one that you lean into, it's recognizing where that line is and being able to pull yourself back. And that's where the self-awareness piece comes in, right?
mm,
So actually, I'm okay as I am. I don't have to be perfect in everything. And it just sometimes helps you just shift that belief a little bit to go, okay, I'm not the only one who feels this way. This is a thing.
yeah,
These are behavioral drivers that we all have. What can I do to support myself into the next step? So
yeah,
I find that my clients find that really a nice hat to try on for size
yeah,
when they fall into that stress response.
yeah. I think also just like looking at, often it is a fear of something that stops us doing it, and it's kind of actually just just looking at that in a bit more detail and
Mm.
looking at the reality of that. Like often those fears are not based on, they're not based on reality at all.
Mm.
And I think also looking at, it often feels safer almost to not do that thing that maybe is exposing you or giving you more visibility, or maybe the worry of what are people going to think, that's a big one. But actually it's thinking about what's the cost of me not taking that step.
Yeah.
Like it's like the risk, the fear is about this risk of this, and the risk is usually quite a small, it's usually
Mm.
not often, no, it's usually quite a small percentage chance of that thing happening. But it's like, actually, what's the cost of you not, like
Yeah.
what's the opposite? And often that cost is even greater. The kind of the not taking the action, not moving forward at all. What is that doing?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. You've got to weigh up the choices there, and it is what is the cost of not doing something? It's such a great coaching question, isn't it? Because we don't always think of it in that way. What's the
Mm,
cost of not doing something? Because actually, staying where we are, however that shows up, it protects us. And say that
mm,
that response we're having protects us in some way, shape, or form. It might be something that we've learned from a parent figure,
mm,
from a line manager. I mean, I remember having this conversation with someone who knew they were micromanaging their team, and the Be Perfect driver was really showing up for them. And they realized they'd copied that unknowingly from somewhere else. And so that should, oh, I should, well,
mm,
we should be doing it perfectly. Whereas
mm.
actually, we were able to sort of disassociate that should and who they were, what they wanted to achieve, and that cost of not doing something
Yeah.
with a bit more of messy action that really helped them to make a shift. So I think you're right. There's the fear, there's the cost of not doing something, but also recognizing when that comes up within us because it's a pattern. It's a
Mm,
pattern that probably shows up in other parts of our leadership too.
yeah.
So it's definitely something, once you have that awareness, you can then apply it to a lot of other scenarios.
Yeah.
Um, and messy action is the way to go. I honestly believe that.
And this is an example of
Yeah,
yeah, messy action in progress for everyone to watch.
but just to go on that about the messy action, I say it's messy. Is it messy or is it just action?
Mm,
Because it feels messy if we're so used to perfection.
mm,
But when you look back on it and you take that first step, it's not usually as bad. Like you say, the risk is not normally as big as what it feels.
yeah,
And that, and also, if it is messy, there's a uniqueness to that, and we're
yeah,
all unique. And actually, they're the things that people like about us more than they
mm,
dislike about us, really. It's something
yeah,
that makes us us. And when we're talking about personal branding, that uniqueness that we have is also really important because it's how we
definitely.
stand out. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So, in terms of kind of takeaways for people, then, yeah, so I guess for me, if you're kind of tuning in, listening, watching to this, I'd probably, just say maybe just have a think about those things that not that you should be doing, those things that you want to be doing, that you're not, and maybe just have a think about, you know, what's stopping you doing those things, and I'd maybe encourage you, maybe even this week, who knows, to take a step forward with one of those things. And it won't be the end result. It will be the kind of, really think about what could a small step forward look like in the short term, and then just do it. Not think about it, not plan it, do it.
Yeah, take the action. Yeah, that's a great tip. And I think a question that it was one that you raised was a great one about what's the cost of not doing it,
Mm,
and is it what's the biggest payoff for you?
yeah.
Because that is how we stay stuck, isn't it? Or we stay comfortable.
Mm.
We stay comfortable. So that's definitely a takeaway there. So yeah, there's our call to action, guys. What are you putting off? And take that. But like Donna says, it's not always about these big, huge shifts. It could be
Mm,
one question, just one tiny thing that can get
yeah,
you unstuck. So I definitely think there's some great questions to
yeah,
be taken away from this episode.
yeah. And I would actually say, like, why don't you share them with us? Share your thing with us. Like,
Yes.
drop us a message. You can message us actually at the same time via the LinkedIn company page for Procurement Pivots,
Mhm.
or message us individually. But I think also giving yourself accountability,
Yeah.
and sharing as well, like, and celebrating the fact that you've taken that step forward on that thing that you've been holding yourself back on. Give yourself a pat on the back. But yeah, if you want to share with us as well, because we'd love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely want to hear. In fact, I got a lovely message, and I think I shared it with you just to say that somebody had reached out to say they'd taken action on the positioning episode straight away and were thinking ahead for their career. And that's the impact we want to have, right? We want to give you
Mm,
food for thought in whichever of these episodes that you tune into based on the pivot that you're looking for. to just really just take some insight and take one coaching question just to go, right, okay, what can I do next? What's my next step? It's not always about step number 10, it's number 1. So yeah,
No.
let us know, please. We'd love to
Yeah,
hear.
absolutely. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us again. Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.